Please welcome Humna Khan to the Muslim Tech Fest stage.
Wow. SubhanAllah, this is like a really beautiful stage and also interestingly set up. So I want to be able to address the crowd properly. So if I'm not coming your way, just raise. Because I feel like when I was sitting there, it was kind of weird. So please let me know. Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you so much for the introduction. Pretty interesting. I've been kind of stewing on this. We named the stars, right? And I've sat with it for like a week or so. And I kind of want you to sit with it and think about what that means. So it's not just a poetic line, right? It's a pretty audacious claim for a community like ours to say that we named those stars. Especially when, for me, you grow up a Muslim woman, you're brown, you're first generation immigrant, and especially my life was centered around I'm a post 9/11 American. So that was very difficult. Now, my childhood involved a lot more like security screenings at airports than actually naming the stars. So that's where that relation kind of came in. And when I think about it, I think that our ancestors, they're out here, they're calculating all these celestial coordinates, And growing up, that's not what I was doing. I was calculating how early I needed to get to the airport because my name is definitely going to light up some sort of security screening. So that's what the stage was set, and in America as a first-gen Muslim immigrant. At home, my dad, who's also an aerospace engineer, he would say things like, we are the ones who created mathematics, and we advanced all of that, we preserved knowledge, and we gave the whole world coffee. And I was like, wow. We really do come from that, but I'd be sitting on the table and I'd be getting humbled by my algebra homework, and I'd be thinking, listen, Dad, that's great, but right now your girl cannot even factor this polynomial, let alone name the stars and make math. So from pretty early on, I felt like, I lived like this kind of split screen type of life. On one side, growing up, it was just news headlines. It was on our side, the TSA lines at the airport, and literally receiving death threats in high school, where I had to have like secret security watch over me through high school and college. And on the other side, I hear your ancestors, they're out there casually mapping the cosmos. And in the middle of that, there's me. I'm sitting there, I'm eating my mom's leftover biryani, I'm just over my textbooks, I'm wondering how can I live up to those people who basically invented half of my syllabus. So somewhere in that confusion and growing up in that hodgepodge, I found love with space. It didn't come naturally. And it wasn't romantic the way that you come out of the womb saying the Carl Sagan quote. It was kind of like I must have watched a few cool documentaries or some videos and thought, well, space doesn't really care about where my parents were born, and that's what I was facing right now. And I thought, okay, well, here's a place where laws are actually clear. Space. Gravity, it doesn't stereotype you. Orbital mechanics, it doesn't question these man-made borders that we're facing right now. And if you get the trajectory right, your spacecraft doesn't say, Humna? And hummus. I like hummus. I'm gonna call you hummus. That's literally one of the Air Force generals that I was serving as a civil servant in the Space Force. He used to call me hummus for 3 years, and because it was easy for him. Nonetheless, orbit doesn't care. It just cares that you did the math, and that's what was important. And what would be playing in the background is the Quran saying that indeed in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alteration of the night and day are signs for people understanding. People understand. Apparently, now I need to be one of these people who understand. No pressure. Okay. But spoiler alert, I didn't just suddenly become a genius. I actually never became a genius, but I did carry like this giant TI-86 calculator and bags and bags and bags of anxiety as I walked into rooms. And what I did though was I kept walking into places that scared me slightly more than what they flattered me as. You know, I was like, I want to walk into this scary place. I want to see what kind of reaction I'm going to get here. So when I walked into NASA, I started at NASA when I was 17. When I walked into NASA, I started at SpaceX when we were, gosh, I met Elon when we were like 30 people. Walking into SpaceX, walking into the Air Force, as the Muslim, and then taking it over into the Space Force. When I walked out of all those rooms because I didn't believe in certain things and started my own venture, ASTRO, my own space tech company, all of that was kind of a scary place. But there were goals I realized I was chasing as a Muslim woman, especially in America, that my imposter syndrome would be like, absolutely not, Humna, do not do that, that's not a good idea. But something weird in my gut and in my head was like, you know what, why not just try it? So I still remember one of my first conversations that I had with Elon Musk when we first met. Weird situation, it was a basement in NASA, there was like 10 people, they were playing with Legos, sitting on the floor, and he said, hey, I'm Elon Musk, and I'm starting a space company. I was like, that doesn't exist, a space company. We have a government space program, we're at NASA. Anyway, one of the things that he said when I finally jumped on board was, I was thinking that, you know, SpaceX was tiny and it wasn't a safe bet, and I wish I could tell you that like I was impossibly cool walking into that, but I walked in and like, yeah, I routinely discuss Mars architecture all the time on a Tuesday. But you know what? I was not cool. I was not. Internally, I was thinking, how did I end up here? And we forgot to lock this door into reality. And I felt that a lot. Every time I walked into a situation, I was like, is this real? Still till today, to be honest. But he said something very on brand for this era, which was basically, you know, look, rockets fall. You know, people walk out, they quit. Investors, they get nervous. But Mars, it's not getting any closer. And if Mars isn't getting any closer, we might as well build it like we're actually going to Mars. Not gonna happen in my lifetime, but build for that. And you know, all those things he said was kind of visionary, but it was also a little unhinged. But it was like a comfortable unhinged in the best of ways. But you know, basically, when I think about that moment is,
So if it goes dark, then go dark. If it goes bright, then go bright.
there's a handful of us in that room. And we're talking about interplanetary civilization like it was some sort of overdue group project. Like this needs to happen, it needed to happen yesterday. So what struck me, it wasn't just like the scale of the dream, but the assumption underneath it. Of course we aim for something that big, you know? And of course regular, flawed human beings like us, we're the ones who have to figure it out. And nobody was waiting for perfect heroes to come walk through the door. And that was strangely, it felt freeing for me. When people ask like how I got to where I got, it's because I was always uncomfortable. But I felt so free in this level of discomfort. So, kind of think about this. If you're picturing all of this development, 25 years in the space program, as you know, this beautiful montage of slow motion rockets and this emotional, inspirational music playing in the background, and then I finally get to walk into this boardroom because now I'm like a big CEO of multiple companies, and all of these middle-aged white men are going to sit around this boardroom at NASA and say, wow, Humna, sorry we misjudged you. We really respect what you do. Go ahead and delete that. That never happened. It's never going to happen. But nonetheless, technical work is the most humbling group project that you'll do with the universe. So, space in particular, it has a very Islamic quality. Space is really there. So, I learned that viscerally on this launch pad at NASA. Right? There's something, I worked on launch operations for quite some time, even when I was in the Space Force, so I grew up on the launch pad. Now, space, you feel like when you see rockets, there's something that you're about standing that close to a rocket, and you're looking up at it, and you're around it, and everything is puffing and hissing, and you're just like, this totally just reorganized my entire ego. You know, sometimes we feel how many things have to go right. You know, the weather, the timings, the systems, the material, the communication, the human judgment, all of that needs to go right. And you realize very quickly that inspiration, it's not like a substitute for the precision that all of this takes. You can't just be inspired to do something right. It has to be very precise in this case both. So sometimes there's going to be a launch that scrubs. Most of my launches scrubbed. Sometimes a system that tells you no go. I've done that before, sitting on a solid rocket motor when I was sitting there on a booster, and I was like, yo, this doesn't feel like how I practice. I think it's a no-go. And everybody on the launch pad is saying, Humna, get it run, and tell us clear. And I was like, I can't do it. I don't think that this is right. And this is a story for another day, but it popped right off. We would have bought the orbiter that day, the space shuttle. But nonetheless, sometimes the thing that you poured yourself into, you fully poured yourself into it, it refuses to cooperate because physics is under no obligation to reward the effort that you put into it. So I once actually gave a TED Talk, and it's called Rocket Failure Story of My Life. And that was some time ago, and honestly, that time still feels very accurate about the story of my life. It's mostly failures, to be honest. And failure, however, it just stopped feeling like a detour. You know, it started feeling more like a part of my training. Not just as an engineer, as a woman, as a Muslim, just as a person. So the launch pad, it taught me something that my faith had already been trying to teach me. It taught me that you do not control reality in obedience. And you prepare, as the last speaker said, you prepare with excellence. And you prepare, you tell the truth about what's happening. And when things are falling apart, you don't let failure make you smaller. So gravity, the cool thing about it, doesn't care about your race. It doesn't care about your political status. It doesn't care about any of these things, your geopolitics, your LinkedIn headline. Who cares? Either your math is right or your spacecraft is about to have a really bad day. A ton of my spacecraft have really bad days. I can tell you that much. But there's no, like, inshallah, when it comes to your trajectory solver. Gravity is happily gonna wash you and rinse you over and over again. So my daily life, how do I live my daily life? It lives in this weird intersection of models, margins, probabilities, and then on one side I'm working with all of these equations, these simulations, and then on the other side, quantum mechanics is just whispering to me. It's like, by the way, the more precisely you know a particle's position, the less precisely you can know its momentum. Oh, man. Right when I thought I was getting it right. In other words, you can do a lot, but nothing is certain. You know, you can't get infinite certainty. So there are hard limits, and they're baked into the reality of everything that you're doing. Meanwhile, my DB clocking me back and forth. It says, to Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth. He created the sun, the moon, the stars, all subjected by His command. So I know that creation, it runs on laws, but the command, it still belongs to Him. And lucky enough, I get to help reverse engineer that and a tiny bit of that source code, but the root access, yeah, that's way above my pay grade. So nonetheless, somewhere in the middle of all that, as I was coming here, there's a question that I was wrestling with. I was like, why are any of you listening to me? You know? I don't say that out of like a fake humility. I'm really thinking because I know what this room represents. And I see it, and I feel it, and I've been feeling it since I got here a few hours ago. But many of you have had to push against, your own ceilings. And many of you have had to go against the odds. And if you haven't already, you might have to in the near future. You need to know how to deal with that. But honestly, to be honest, I don't take half the things that I say seriously. I really don't. But the fact that you showed up, the way that this room came together at Muslim Tech Fest, London, the way that you're present right now, that speaks so much louder than any words that I could say. So Thank you for that. And if I have any right to be up here, it's not because I was some sort of brilliant pig. It's because my journey, it sits right at the collision point of a few things that many of us share. You know, being Muslim, maybe being some sort of immigrant, maybe being grown up in this world that treated us sometimes like a virus in the system. And then you have to choose to walk straight into the systems that build the future, knowing that. I didn't end up in space tech because I was fearless. I'm not. I ended up there because the alternative to doing that was accepting that someone else's stereotype should define my ceiling. And that felt worse than sitting with my imposter syndrome. You know, I didn't stay because those rooms were comfortable. As I told you, they were very uncomfortable. Yeah. They still are. I stayed because every time I thought about backing away, you know, I thought about like some Muslim girl coming after me in some time period far later, and she's walking down and saying, "Oh yeah, we've been here before. You know, Muslims belong in this story." And she's never gonna know my name, and she's not gonna know your names, but she's just gonna live in this world that was guided by our decisions today. This whole last week I spent at the White House and on Capitol Hill and walking through Congress, and I felt like our representation is not here, and I'm not talking on the politics side. The people who run the land, who create the civilization, who build, are not, our people are not here anymore. But I realized there's this tiny, almost absurd hadith that hits me the hardest. You know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if the final hour comes while one of you has a sapling in your hand, then plant it. And I was like, dude, the whole world's ending and I'm supposed to plant a seed? But, you know, if you ask an engineer, it feels that you hear that and you're like, that's not like an optimally efficient use of the time that we have left. You know, but however, spiritually that makes sense. That was on point, where it says even when the simulation clock is at t equals end, you still execute the right instruction. You know, you plant, you build, you ship the last bit of good that you can, knowing that you may never see the result. We plan for 200 years from now, we plan for 300 years from now, not tomorrow. So that is exactly what working in space and emerging tech feels like to me as a Muslim. We're planting the seeds in environments where physics, unforgiving. Future, totally unknown. Social context, extremely messy as Muslim. And the cosmic compile they're completely invisible to us. So what do we do? From that side, the stereotype is, you must have got it together now, you must be so confident. But the reality is kind of closer to, I hope no one notices that I just triple-checked this unit conversion because I've seen enough Mars climate observer, orbiter memes to last me a lifetime. The thing is, a minus sign matters, and I've done this many times. Celsius versus Fahrenheit, blew out the chips for the Mars lunar orbiter, so here we are now. But you can have the right intention, you know, you can do tons of successful missions and have a beautiful mission patch to show for it. You can take inspirational quotes and put them in your cubicle on your Instagram or on your folders, whatever the case is. But if you mess up that minus sign, physics is gonna clap you back immediately. So honestly, that's also very on brand for our being. So we talk about qadr, we talk about the waqf all the time. And one thing that hits me the most that I remind everybody of, Rasulullah said, to tie your camel and trust in Allah once you tie your camel. Now that's basically an analog version of run your tasweet and make dua, right? But think about it, Allah is in control, you know? But did you validate your models? So we need to keep asking ourselves that. The Quran, it talks about going back to the people of understanding. It talks about those people of understanding, the ones that we all need to be, are those who remember Allah while standing, sitting, laying on their side, and reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. And that is a constant reminder to tell me that my job, actually anything that I do, is not to control the whole outcome. My job is to move into rooms intentionally and be intentional in everything that I do. So to remember love when I'm standing at the whiteboard, when I'm yapping, when I'm on the stage speaking at all these industry things saying, I don't believe in this, I'm not gonna do it. Coming from the US, being a part of the Department of War, you'll see how many stages you step off of and say, I don't want to do any of this. You read the room, you know? So standing on those stages, when I'm sitting in a design review, up until last November when I retired from one of my companies, every day I was getting a new missile or a new drone or a new some sort of weapon come to my desk, and I was like, not having it. Like, this is what, at least America had become. So, rejecting that part, or when I'm laying on my side, I'm staring at my ceiling, I'm thinking, dude, I'm retired, huh? What am I doing with my life? Nonetheless, standing, sitting, lying, all of this is to move intentionally with the thought of what's my thought in mind. Tie your camel, run your test, plant your seeds, and here's the other thing that all of this has kind of forced me to confront. It's the myths that we carry about who we're allowed to be in these stories. Now, what does that mean? Growing up, Muslim women in tech, especially, it was almost framed in just two ways. Number one, either you were the tragic victim of some sort of bias, or number two, you were this TED Talk superhero who wakes up at 4 a.m. and cures bigotry and then launches a rocket by lunchtime. I've been framed that way, and people know me as that person, but I'm not either of those. I really am not. I'm the person who I once walked into a clean room at NASA and I'm wearing full hijab and I'm just like, I need to put a cover on my hijab. This is so awkward. I need to build something out to put on me. Am I doing this right? I'm feeling painfully out of place all the time. I'm painfully out of place and everybody's watching me, wondering if I'm doing it right or am I about to get kicked out of this space fabrication facility right now? When I'm making presentations for Elon and I have this whole lunar launch complex thing in mind that I've been working on for 20 years and I put together the deck, it's beautifully animated, and I spelled the same word wrong on every single slide, including the title slide. Regolith. It's not even a hard word. R-E-G-O-L-I-T-H, regolith. You keep looking at your work over and over again and you won't find the mistakes, so check twice. But in the end, I didn't fit this narrative of this superhero Muslim woman that fought the odds. Honestly, but I refuse to be the victim side either. I live in this messy, messy middle. And this messy middle where I'm a very regular person who happens to be just stubborn enough to keep showing up in places that were not designed with me in mind. I'm just stubborn. I'm just pushy. I'm just very comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's normal. Ironically, that's also very on brand for our Muslim history. The Muslims who helped build what we now romanticize as the Golden Age, they weren't walking around saying, behold, we are in the Golden Age. No, they were probably just trying to make an instrument a little bit more precise maybe, or they're reconciling one model with maybe a new observation, or maybe they were just translating a text more faithfully, or they were treating the next patient a little better. They didn't know they were in the Golden Age. They were in the language of the Quran. The ones who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while they're sitting, standing, lying on their side, reflecting on the creation of the heavens and the earth, not superhuman, as the last speaker said, but just consistent in showing up. And that, to me, that's the invitation at this moment, especially for Muslims in tech. That's what we should be living. We live in a time where the tools in our hands are exponentially more powerful than what anybody has had in the past, from AI and quantum and space tech. All the fun goodies, I love it. It's so much fun. But where we still have spiritually the requirements. Weirdly, they're the same still. We still have to pay attention to the science. We still have to act with ihsan. We still don't confuse partial control with ultimate authority, and we plant the seeds where we go, wherever we are. It's the same requirements as our ancestors who came before us, who, blew the stars. So because of that, what you do might not look like cinematic heroism. What I do doesn't look like cinematic heroism that says Islam, greatest civilization of all time? No. I mean, it'll look like what I do every day, which is a ton of board meetings, awkward conversations, and very unglamorous decisions. If you knew the type of decisions I'd make, you'd be like, that's not glamorous at all. But nonetheless, speaking to somebody outside, I've been excited every single day for 25 years, whether it was working for NASA as a researcher on the Mars exploration program. I started when the last shuttle blew up and we lost these astronauts. I started on the accident investigation board. I moved on to the Mars exploration rovers, the first 2 rovers on the Mars, and saying happy birthday, went to sleep, said goodbye, fine. Then went on to the Mars Science Laboratory. After all of that, they put a contract on my desk saying Obama's going to cancel the space shuttle human spaceflight program. Now we're moving into satellites. I look at the contract, it's Department of Defense. I was like, no, thank you. Walked out of there. 10 years later, went to SpaceX, and over there, failed a rocket, 4, 5, 5th time, landed the rocket, And then started building on that, building on Dragon spacecraft, went from SpaceX, and then when I couldn't stand for what Elon was doing at the time, saying people are gonna die, we just gotta take the risk, I was like, I'm gonna join the other side. Started working launch operations, and I went into the Space Force, where I get to say, clear on launch for every single rocket, whether it was a SpaceX rocket, a Blue Origin rocket, all of the different rocket companies, and I launched lines that used to clear those launches. So at that point, I felt like, okay, now I have control of the payload, of the vehicle, and now the launch pad. Eventually, weird situations where I'm in a bunker meeting with our president in his first term, and he says, you're kind of ethnic, so you probably should help be on the teams to take down Syria and Iran satellites. And I was like, and today I walk out. And then I started my own thing, ASTRO, my space tech laboratory. Again, even if it was my own thing, walking in, being like, I don't know if I belong in this space. Literally. When we started, there was only 2 space companies doing what we could offer, and now, from the club, we're at like 150 space companies. My team is 80% Muslim, and not because they're born into Islam. I got a ton of reverts, and so it's a beautiful group. But, well, I'm not even gonna say like you don't have to wait to become a finished, polished version of yourself. You can still stay scrappy as long as you need to, as long as you're moving properly with the intention. You're entering the rooms where the future is being built. When I had started my company, no, I did not think I was doing that. I was like, I need a time kill right now. What else would I do? I've been in the industry for over 20 years. So know that you can keep renewing your intention. You're allowed to show up as you are. You could show up in your funny clothing, you could show up with your accent, you could show up with your passport, with your hijab, your beard, your awkwardness, and your doubt, your anxiety. Show up, and still you can claim a seat at the table where rockets are being built, where models are being trained, where systems are being architected. That was meant for us. This is our destiny. And not because someone did you a favor, but because you bring something necessary. You bring something necessary to the table, a memory, a tradition, that's something that we have the people who treated the cosmos as a text. They looked at the sky, they read the skies. They read it like a book, And that took accountability, seriously. And they understood knowledge as a trust, as amana. And that's where we have to be. As we're gaining knowledge, as we're receiving, as we're giving, that this is amana. So we name the stars. We name the stars not so that we can brag about it when we come on stage over here at Muslim Tech Fest in London, flying all the way from LA, but 1,000 years later, but so we can remember what kind of people we're supposed to be. It's people who look up. It's people who think deeply. To me, it's people who laugh at themselves. And it's people who know their limits, it's people who still plant the seeds, even when everything around us, in our ummah, with our countries, with our brethren, this whole thing, everything feels like it's fleeting. We have that responsibility. So if our generation can do that, if we can build rovers on Mars, and we can code and quantum systems, and we can develop our startups with that spirit, then maybe, just maybe, some future kid will hear it You know, some future kid will hear it and say, you know, we named the stars. And instead of thinking, yeah, we did that before, you know, that's what we used to be, Abdullah, you're gonna think like, oh yeah, I mean, that sounds like us. Of course we named the stars. So, alhamdulillah, you know, my dua is very simple for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they keep our hearts calibrated. May our intentions be debuggable. You know, may our egos under strict version control. Our tawakkul stronger than our anxiety. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us, make our taqwa tighter than our error bars, our lives more stable than our control systems, our equations roughly correct, and our models honest about their limits. May He make our code kinder than the world expects it to be, and our seeds may they grow in ways we will never fully measure, so that our legacy is more luminous than the stars that we name. Ameen. Thank you so much for having me here. I can do 2 quick questions. Your questions can only be a few words long, and I will respond only in a couple of words as well. Yes? Absolutely. Somebody was asking me actually today, she said, can you build a super successful aerospace company on Muslim foundations? My company is built on that. You know, have never taken interest. We have a musalla in Los Angeles. We don't adjacent to the system of, you know, war. We actually follow the principles and cultures, and our procedures are not going to say this is an ayat in the Quran. But all of our actions and all of our movements, even all of the non-Muslims in the company, we follow that. So yes, you can build a super successful anything. The only way to build it is through, you know, what we've learned in Islam.